every hot woman either has a boyfriend or a guy that will be upset to hear he's not her boyfriend. So if they say my friend, it's a woman. If they say a friend, it's a guy. I can come out here and fight Quebecois people and full contact in armor, and it's awesome. What would you do? I was like, shoot you or stab you or fight in any way with a weapon. My skill set is better than it has ever been. My brother was killed like over a decade ago. On the anniversary of his death and on his birthday, I break down in tears.
We're here. We got the one and the only, the legendary Adam Lyons, formerly known back in the day as AFC. And Adam, you're in Montreal.
I am in Montreal.
What the hell, bro?
Every year.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I never fail.
I know what you're doing here, but do you want to let people know what you're doing here?
Yeah, so I started sword fighting at the age of 7, became a professional sword fighter. So that means like pretty much my income came from fencing throughout my teenage years. It's not a lot of money in case anyone cares. And I competed in England. I was ranked number 3 in London for a while. Then I moved to South Africa. I lived in South Africa for a few years. And I was number 6 in South Africa, number 1 in KwaZulu-Natal, which is the Durban area. And yeah, I got obsessed with sword fighting. Got so obsessed with it that a buddy, and I'm obsessed with Dungeons and Dragons because I'm a nerd representing the Hellfire Club today, in case you don't know. And a buddy of mine said there's a place where you can go where you can fight for real and play Dungeons and Dragons. And it's not based on rolling dice, it's based on hitting people. And I was like, no way, I need to try this. So of course it's called live action role play. And a lot of people give live action role play a bad rep, and it's deserved. There's a lot of people that are role playing; they're not actually fighting. So, like, you know, they'll swing the sword, and you can say "miss," and I'm like, "Oh no!" Like, because they're role playing the fight.
While they hit you, but they say "miss."
Miss, which means they dodged it, right? And and most people know that version. But in Montreal,
yes,
and in England, and in Germany and in Russia, there are events where it's full contact fighting in medieval times. And that's what I do, and that's epic. But you can't do that really in most of America.
Is it not legal?
It's the medical issue. It's the medical bills. So that's why these other countries do it. Now, I actually have my own event I've started in Texas where we have found an insurance company that will work with us, and we actually have a full contact one in Texas, which is the only one of its kind.
If I can thank Trudeau and the Canadian government for one thing, it will be that we have great health care. You will wait 8 hours, but they will see you for free.
Which is great, and it means that I can come out here and fight Quebecois people and full contact in armor, and it's awesome.
That's amazing. Thank you, and welcome to Quebec.
Yep, merci, monsieur.
Bonjour, Quebec. You know, Jeffy says he comes here for 2 things, poutine and teen poon. So, but you're here for
I
other
love
things.
that. I am here for poutine, sword fighting, and most definitely, poon. That's an absolute fact. We bathe in the river. It's like co-ed after the fights. Yeah, it's awesome.
I'm loving this, bro. Listen, there's something weird that happens here in Montreal. I gotta tell you this because I don't know if you know about this. You're like an old school guy in terms of like you have a lot of experience with social skills and teaching those social skills. You've been doing this probably 20 years, I can imagine. Me, it's 16, 17 years. So you must be like 20.
Coming up to 20 years now.
Okay. There's something that happens here in the water. I don't know what it is because me, Owen, Eric, and all these other guys, Cliff, it's like this weird like 2-hour of driving radius between Montreal, Toronto, and Ottawa where the guys just go, fuck this shit. I need to figure it out or die. I don't know what it is about this area. It's something, bro. It's crazy.
So London was the other one.
Piccadilly Circus.
Right, Piccadilly Circus.
Yeah.
And it's actually to do with how polite we are as men.
Interesting.
We're raised in England to be respectful. You can't talk to somebody else. You have to be a Canadian, same thing. I'm so sorry. And this apologetic culture that we have, unless you learn skills to date, you're not naturally good.
Right. So by default, you're set into the nice guy category, which is the opposite of what would be attractive to the opposite sex. So you've pigeonholed yourself subconsciously your whole life by doing the nice guy thing.
Which is hysterical because I just explained the reason I go to fighting events. I go to the fighting events in those areas because it's more violent.
Right. You seek out the masculine men and the violence to
which
progress
is why
you.
We're trained to be polite. And it's so funny. People get this wrong all the time. You don't fear a man that is beating his chest and shouting about how big an alpha he is. Like, I love watching those guys on the podcast. Like, look at me, I'm alpha in every aspect. I'm like, bro, I swear to God, you and me. And it's so funny. It's like, what would you do? I was like, shoot you or stab you or fight in any way with a weapon because a weapon is an equalizer, right? Like, you look at the riots going on in England right now. I love it. Like, not that the riots are happening. They're terrible. But I love that it's showing people the England that I grew up in. I grew up on the streets of London, in East London. It was violent and dangerous. It was always going to spill over, always. And we've had this happen countless times in the past. And when I come to America, it's always funny. Everyone's like, oh, but you English, like, oh, please pour me a cup of tea. I'm like, no. That hides a very violent culture that controlled 3/4 of the world.
Correct.
Make no mistake how dangerous English and Canadians are, because Canadians are just a subset of old England.
We are.
Yeah. I mean,
God
you guys
bless
are
the Queen.
huge as well, right? Like,
God
it's
bless
a
the
thing.
Queen. And then Australia was a bunch of prisoners they put on the islands, and now,
Dude,
you know,
Australians
yeah.
are so much more dangerous. Like,
Yes.
we have a fighting unit that come from Australia to Montreal every year, and they wreck shop. These guys are legends. Shout out.
Interesting.
To Aussies.
It's funny that you talk about the podcaster people. It's funny because we're here like doing a podcast, and it's actually like very strange for me to do a podcast. It's so bizarre. It's like the weirdest thing. It's like putting on my shoes backwards, or like trying to speak Chinese. Like doing a podcast as a guy who's like, let's just go out and prove it.
Dude.
Right? It's just really weird. Like, I remember one of the articles I read about you. So I'm going to tell you a whole bunch of stuff about you
All right.
you don't know that I know.
Go for it.
So I read an article about you. This is like 12 years ago, before you did the Dr. Phil stuff and all that. And this article was, I think it was Maxim magazine, where you had to go up to there, like walk up to the elevator and like
You
talk to
read that one? Dude, I don't even talk about it
Yes.
because I don't think anyone would believe me. I
Right.
broke into a building.
Right, exactly.
That's
Can you tell the
so
story? Can you tell
funny.
the story?
Oh my God. Dude, no, okay. One of the hardest parts about being me
Yes.
is I am nuts. And if somebody is like, you should do this thing, I'm like, I'm gonna do that thing. Right? Like, and unless you've lived with me or hung out with me for a long period of time, you don't know that about me. So it's funny because I'll go on podcasts and stuff and go, look at that guy. Like, what's he? And I'm like, no, you don't understand how I'm crazy. I'm gonna do the thing. So one day, this guy from Maxim contacts me and says, we need somebody to go and prove that you can meet a woman in a coffee shop and get a phone number. I'm like, sure. And he goes, meet a woman on the streets of London and get a phone number. Sure. And he goes, meet a woman at her place of work. I'm like, whoa, come again? He goes, yeah, you know, like if you're in the office. I'm like, but you know I don't work in the office. He goes, right. I'm like, no, you don't understand. You want me to break into a building, go up to a woman while she's at work and get her phone number? And he goes, oh, I didn't realize that. And he goes, if it's not possible, I said, I didn't say it wasn't possible. I just want you to know how impossible the task is before I do it.
Touche.
And then I did it. And it was, dude, I haven't told this story for like 15 years. Okay, so here's what happened. I did the coffee shop in the street was easy. The office was the hard one. So they selected some random office that I walked into, and there was a security guard. And the security guard's like, who are you here with? And I was like, I'm just helping that lady. And then I ran up and helped open the door for her and helped her carry some stuff because she was carrying some things. And so that's why I got into the building. And then I walked into this random office on like the 3rd floor. I like remember the floor. And I heard somebody else say a name of someone that was leaving for lunch. I forget the name now, but let's just say it was Allison. Like, Allison's going to lunch. So I walked in and went, is Allison here? And that you just missed her. She went to lunch. And they were like, oh. And I was like, am I okay to wait for her? And they went, sure. And so I just sat in her desk and I spoke to the person next to me, got her phone number, got a date, and left. And the whole thing was being filmed by this random dude that was following me with a camera. And no one in the everyone in the office was just like, it was a still camera. And everyone in the office was just like, what's going on? And they just let it happen. I mean, nowadays, I would be in jail. I would be in jail. There's no...
Or you would be viral on a TikTok clip.
Yeah.
One of the two options would have happened.
It's so funny. And there was an option because like I remember back in the day, I was signed with a collective who also had Vitali. And they really wanted me to do like the Vitali style pranks and dating stuff. And I had some students at the time. One's name was Jesse and another guy, I forget his other name. Anyway, but they ended up doing it and they became Simple Pickup. Yes. And so, but I was doing all that stuff well before, but I didn't want video of it because I'm Gen X. I come from an age where I'm like, no, don't film me. I don't want you to know how crazy I am. You know, and it was so funny because I remember I was still coaching the Simple Pickup guys on dating when they were doing Simple Pickup. And they would have millions of people like, you guys are so good. And they'd phone me and be like, hey, so I got this girl's phone number. She's not replying back. What do I do? That's so funny you said that. I thank you for giving me the opportunity to tell a story.
Man, when I have a great story in mind that I think nobody's heard, I want to bring up the story.
Funny.
And it's so important to bring up these stories because, like I said, we're here talking on a podcast format, which is something that we don't usually do. I think podcasts are kind of dumb and weird, especially when it comes to social skills, because it's like you're not going out and showing the social skills in real life with somebody else. You're showing it like to a camera, which is bizarre to me. Owen said something to me a long time ago. He said, I'm afraid because these kids who are 16 years old one day are going to take over because they're born with a cell phone in their hand. And I was like, that makes no sense. And now I totally get it. But from when we used to practice, it was like we would go and do it in real life. And that story of the Maxim part is amazing because it's an exact example of what somebody wouldn't even dream of doing now these days, which is so important. You know, you mentioned like not wanting to be filmed. There's like a resurgence of people like doing like little prank videos and just like social videos of like, they call it social experience now of like, hi, good morning, how are you? I see you have the Ray-Ban glasses on, the little camera on those.
Dude, I love these things.
These things are getting popular again. And I think it's interesting because people are like, oh my gosh, that guy talked to a person in real life. I haven't seen that. And I think that's because we've been bombarded with podcast videos since the last pandemic for the last 4 years. Yeah. So now everybody is talking about a theory that they make up in their mama's basement, but we're not like microphone podcast coaches. We actually like, if we have a theory, it's coming from being out what we call in the field or practicing it in real life.
Yeah,
and then teaching it to 50 or 60 or 100 people and then refining that material. So it's crazy to be like talking on a microphone now because as you said, that's not what you would do before. You would actually go out and try something.
And here's what's funny. I still practice. I'm still in field all day, every day, like all the time. Because everyone, when they see me, they're always like, wow, you're still good at this. I'm like, who stops? Like really, who stops? Because I don't. My skill set is better than it has ever been. I love, there was this guy that did like an expose on me. He goes, Adam claims now he's almost at 100% or he gets everyone he wants. But look, here's a video of him saying he only gets this many. I'm like, yeah, from 12 years ago. I was worse 12 years ago. Like, it's so funny. So anyone watching this, yes, I was definitely worse 19 years ago when I was doing this. I am so much better now. Like my success rate is through the roof nowadays. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of reasons for that. There's biological reasons. The male is most attractive between 35 and 55. I'm 43 years old. I'm 2 years away from...
And you don't look 43, bro.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah,
I always say...
That's joyous, boyish energy.
You look as young as the woman you're having sex with. So based on that, I am currently 22. So, but like the point is, my peak is 45 of physical attractiveness. I'm 2 years away from my scientific peak, right?
Yeah.
Where they
How
say
old do you think I look? I know black doesn't crack.
Yeah, black doesn't crack. I would say you've got to be mid-30s.
Wow, 40.
40. What? See?
So we
got that thing.
Going out and talking to strangers
yeah.
and pronouncing that energy, expelling that energy, and learning how to be youthful, boyish.
It's the real youth serum.
Yes, yes, it really is. Yeah. A little bit of moisturizer and exfoliating too, but
it's shocking. I remember thinking like before I got into dating that I would, that a guy in his 40s could never, pick up a woman in their 20s, but it's totally doable. And easier actually. Like shockingly easy. And it's because I'm practicing all the time. But I don't practice for camera. I don't practice for film. That's not what interests me. And I'm always pushing the envelope. Like, what can I do? So like the most recent one that I did was July 4th. So we're filming August 8th. On July the 4th, I decided to throw a pool party at my house. Now I live an hour away from anywhere. I live on a ranch in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by trees. And I met a whole bunch of random women. And I invited them to spend July the 4th at my place. And we had like a half-naked pool party at my place. And it was awesome. And it was 10 leagues ahead of what I was doing when I was 28, when I was trying to meet women in nightclubs and bring them to nightclubs. Because when you bring a woman to a nightclub, there's all these other guys, there's all these other distractions. When you're at your house and you're cooking and there is nowhere else for an hour, well, you all end up in bed together. And it was an absolute no-brainer. I was like, why did I never think, well, I suppose I didn't have a swimming pool before, but like, it was a no-brainer to do this. And it's funny because I've met guys that are like, oh, I live an hour outside the city. I couldn't ever do this. I'm like, you're nuts. This is the best place. And also like, it's like, oh, let's go horse riding. Like, let's go for a walk. And I know there's a guy listening to this who's like, oh yeah, but I'm not rich. I'm like, but the funny thing is when you live an hour outside the city, it's not expensive.
No, it's not.
It's not expensive at all. And the horses, I don't own them. They're my neighbors. I'm just allowed to ride them. Like, so when, like, am I wealthy? Yes. Is my wealth anything to do with my ability to meet women? No. I didn't spend any money on them. I cooked for them. We made cucumber sandwiches. If you can't afford cucumber sandwiches at your pool party, but I promise you, cucumber sandwiches are going to go down better than anything else.
Yes. You know what's funny? I'm gonna riff off that for a second, and then I want to choose to the topic of people not being social these days. So I find that my life has gotten better now as well in that way. And like I don't date at all. I don't go on dates. The idea of going on a date is counterproductive to me because going on a date would mean that I have nothing I'm doing. I'm not busy. Why would I go on a date? So I just invite people like how you're inviting people. I invite people in that way. I call it living your wet dream or taking your passion and making it happen. So there's like a photo of on my Instagram recently. I had a bunch of girls come out and do horseback riding with me. And I said everybody should just like wear a white shirt. And we'll go up to like the crest of the mountain. And like when the sun's coming down, they were like, okay. And they all showed up with cowboy hats, extra cowboy hats, and they indulged me. And it was kind of weird. And I was like, all right, that's kind of funny. It's like, maybe it's a one-off fluke. And then I decided to have everybody come meet me for coffee and whiskey. And I was like, all right, it's a great idea for me because I love coffee and whiskey. It sounds absolutely boring. But the idea of it was to prove to everybody that you can have 6 beautiful, high-quality, intelligent people come and meet you for a coffee when people are saying, oh, they just only want to go to rooftop steak dinners. Dude. That was the idea of it. So when you say you had a place outside the city for an hour away and cucumber sandwiches, which sounds horrible. I don't like cucumber, but if you're into it, you're into it.
We had egg salad sandwiches as well. You know, Madison, we had egg salad too. There were options.
All right. My point here, what I'm saying is it's great that you can, I think now more than ever, people are afraid to do amazing things alone. And if they can find other people that they want to do that weird thing along with, they're more excited than ever because we're so reserved. We're so unsocial now. Everybody's working from home.
Everyone's bored.
There you go.
You know, this is actually our method that we teach. I've been teaching this for 19 years. It's step 1, you organize an event and you invite people to it. The event has to be catered to the kind of women you want.
Correct.
That's so powerful. So
yes.
like I'm for most women, I'm the guy that doesn't count. I'm the guy they have sex with in between relationships.
Right.
And
because they're always in between something.
Yeah. One of my exes used to say to me, every hot woman either has a boyfriend or a guy that will be upset to hear he's not her boyfriend.
Correct. Because he's the guy who's driving her from work at 11 o'clock back home, picking her up in the car.
Got it.
And he wants to be, but if he isn't, then...
Well, and they may be making out and having a little bit of sex every so often,
right.
but she won't formally announce that they're dating, right?
Right.
And guys get this wrong. They think that hot women are all single. It's like, no.
None of them.
They're not single, but they are always portraying themselves as single. So guys like, yeah, she's single. It's like, no, she's got like 3 guys on the go, but none of them have claimed her yet, right? Or have got the crown yet. None of them have that.
Yeah.
And that's like such a common misconception. And it's a shame because, like I said, and this goes into one of my issues with Red Pill and like their things they get wrong is they're like, yeah, like no one's dating these women, like no one's approaching them. No, they're approached all the time. They refuse to acknowledge it's happening.
I completely agree with that. You know, I was just in South America, and in South America, it's very common to send flowers. It's not like a weird like simpy thing. It's like you just send flowers.
Yeah.
You'll send flowers before you even meet somebody, just to show them that you're serious, and they'll make those schedule free to see you. So it costs $10.
Yeah.
So I see a lot of girls just posting flowers on their Instagram, but I'm like, who sent you those flowers? Like, a friend. I'm like, are you dating anybody? No. It's like, okay, there's a guy who's pursuing you. You're taking offers, but you're still willing to go on dinner with me on Wednesday because you think I have more upward life mobility potential. That's what it is. And I'm like, okay, I see how that's working, right?
Have you heard the difference between a friend and my friend? This is one of my favorites.
Go ahead.
So if they say my friend, it's a woman. If they say a friend, it's a guy. Yeah.
Clip it. That's the Instagram. That's the YouTube.
Dude, I'm telling you,
clip.
I'm packed with so much of these. Again, because I'm still practicing. I'm still talking to people all the time. So I see all these like little things. I'm like, oh yeah, I can. You start to spot the patterns, right? But beautiful women, they don't want to announce that they're taken because it instantly lowers their market value. You know, if she's single, she's got 5 or 6 guys that she's having sex with that will do whatever she wants. She's then got a group of 20 guys that are simping after her who will probably do most of what she wants. The minute she says, this is my guy, all of them go away.
She loses all the compound interest. It's like a bank account. Yeah.
So as a guy, you're competing with all these other people, which is why I personally like being the guy that she comes to when she wants to have a date or show that she's got someone, because then I don't have to do anything. And then if I want to claim, I call it the opportunity window. There'll be a moment where the woman is totally available, where internally in her, she's like, I gotta go on a date. I gotta meet a guy. You know, that's the moment where I'll step in. And then if I want to date them, I'm like, okay, cool. This is it.
It makes more sense to be able to raise yourself in the ranking if you're already like number 3 in the play versus just coming straight. Also, I think there's a disadvantage if you're the guy who they're like I'm single and now I'm going to compare all the offers. The problem is the offer is like whatever the best offer is. They're not comparing you based on your merit, personality, how much chemistry you have. They're like, what's the best offer?
Right.
And if you're comparing for the best offer, you're not going off of really what a relationship or dating is supposed to be about.
Right. Well, and here's how social media and the red pill is destroying the numbers. And
Let's go. Preach. I got a whole list of questions here. We got 30 minutes. I got more
we
questions.
clearly need to do this more often. I mean, we'll make it a regular thing every year, right? I'll come out here and I'll do this first. So the problem is you have to understand context, right? So my background's in psychology. I've got a degree in psychology. I've got an MBA in business.
Nice.
And my MBA in business has a massive component of psychology. plus I've been doing dating for 19 years. What I'm saying is I'm not an idiot, right? So I also, in 2006, was running the London nightclub scene. I was one of the first people to organize nightclubs and bring women to it, which is very popular as a method nowadays. So, been there, done that, wrote the book, literally wrote the book on it, right? So now we've established that. Let's look at the problem. Most of the information coming out about dating is coming from popular people who have networks, and they're leveraging their network to say popular. So you're only hearing one viewpoint. So one of the common red pill misconceptions that drives me nuts, and again, it's math. I don't have a problem with the community. I've got red pill friends. I love them. And there is a lot about the red pill that makes sense. But one of the biggest ones is math. They will say that women are constantly going to be fighting, dating up, trying to get like the best of the best, right? There's some kind of like massive hierarchy. And I go, explain India. Explain India. Explain China. Explain the countries that have massive population growth amongst the poor people. How are they doing it? And everyone's like, well, these women would like a better guy, I'm sure, but they're not getting them, are they? Why are the majority of people, watch the movie Idiocracy, come back to me, because in Idiocracy, at the beginning of the movie, we get this example, a successful dude with one woman who's the hottest woman out of all the women there. Meanwhile, the population expansion is happening in the poor neighborhoods. And this, I only know this because I grew up poor. I have never seen any of my friends who grew up in the same neighborhood as I am who struggle with women. They're all good, really good, and broke. Like, I got a buddy who's a scaffolder. He just quit scaffolding so he can like find himself doing like odd jobs. Never has a problem with a woman. Always goes out, meets a woman, no money, not particularly good looking. Sorry, buddy, I do love you. But he's never had a problem with women. And the women he dates are hot. If I showed you the women these guys are dating, and they go to the nightclubs, they hang out with all these other people, explain it, and they can't explain it. Because what they're really describing is a subset of what is going on around them. It's a tiny group in a nightclub of gold diggers. Yeah, the gold diggers fight to dig better gold. Cool, you found that. And is there evidence in psychology that backs it? Yes, done on the same studies on those same groups. Take that study, drag it to India, drag it to the poor parts of Los Angeles, and you will see that protection and provider isn't about being the richest. It's not a competition. It's about, can you protect them? Can you provide for them? Just provide, not fulfill their life with every extravagance they want. Just provide. I always tell everyone, I was like, you really want to impress a woman, come to my house. This is key here. Come to my house and you can bring a private chef and you can bring food from the best restaurants in the world and you can show off your money. I'll make dinner in competition with the chef. And you watch, all the women will love me and not you. Because you had to bring a chef to make the food. You had to use money to impress her. I don't need either of those things. I will cook and I will explain to her why all of the spices I'm using are based on her palate. I will ask her where her family are from, and I will use spices from the region that her family come from to try and make food as good as her grandma, just based on descriptions from her. Will I get it? No, I'll fail. I will not make food as good as grandma, but I will use the same spices, and she'll say, you know what, it kind of reminds me of when I was a kid. And I will have that conversation over the meal while you're sitting there talking about your Lamborghini parked in my driveway, and that's great, because after she looks at it, she's going to come back in and she's going to be there with me. There was actually a really good episode of The Bachelorette I watched the other day. I'm dating a 22-year-old woman. Don't judge me. She wants to watch The Bachelorette. And there was a guy who brought his Lamborghini, or McLaren, I forget which car it was, to show off to the women, or to the woman on set, right? They're all competing. And then another guy just gets in his car and revs the engine. And he won't rev the engine because he's scared of revving the engine. So this other guy revs it, and because he's being a bad boy, he doesn't have the money, he doesn't have the wealth, he doesn't have the car, he broke a rule.
Right.
And that gave her adventure, and so she preferred that guy. The red pill gets a lot of things correct, but it's describing a very specific type of woman that you find in nightclubs and I know because I hung out with them and I met all those women before, and I'm telling you, that is not the majority of women on the planet.
Right.
It's a minority.
If you're living in Las Vegas or Miami, the city attracts people. Bingo. Those people in Miami or Las Vegas were not born in Miami or Las Vegas. Bingo. They moved there. It's like everybody in LA is there less than 3 years because they wanted to follow a dream. I'm going to hit you with some more stuff on that. I love everything you said. I'm going to say it in a little more nerdy way because I haven't figured it out in stories yet. the idea of a guy having status or having value isn't like, what does he have? It's really about how accomplished is he? How accomplished is he? Like, I'll give you a story. A buddy of mine, he rides motorcycles all across actually Asia and Europe. He'll do like a 2,000 mile like drive on his motorcycle, okay? And he recently got rid of his motorcycle and he decided like, I'm just gonna like have a local scooter to drive around in town. So he has that scooter. Now, when he meets women, he usually goes to like these motorcycle events and the women will see the guy that has the bigger motorcycle and they'll be like, oh, that's nice. And then they'll see him and they'll say, why are you riding a scooter? And he's like, I've got these amazing, incredible stories about how I backpacked through Europe and how I drove a motorcycle through Tibet and da-da-da. And that's more interesting because 100%. He's a man that's actually accomplished. So I think the biggest value a guy can have is being accomplished in his life in whatever field he's in. That's like the cooking, you say cooking the food or the ability to do that. It's more impressive than showing off this signal of what the thing means. So it's not even the money, it's what the money actually should mean about you. It's not the motorcycle, what the motorcycle should be about you. If you just hire a chef, it doesn't mean anything. But if you had tried to cook, it says a lot more about you than if you had done the obvious extravagant thing.
Bingo. So like it's shiny object syndrome. You can absolutely attract a magpie with a shiny object and the woman will go over to that shiny object and be interested for a moment. I was on this podcast. I'm not going to name it, but it was really funny because there's a guy who I've not seen anymore. So I don't know if he's been cancelled or something went wrong. I heard that a prediction of mine came true, which is what I'm really happy about. But this guy, we were vibing pretty well. We were kind of like getting on with each other and everything was good. And then he started saying some real off-base remarks. He said two things that upset me, and no one really knows what the two things were, but I'll share them. One thing he said is he doesn't like his followers. He goes, I don't like my customers. And I was like, that's a problem. I was like, because I love my customers. I was like, if you come to learn dating from me, like, I love you. Like, I want to help you. I've been there. I know how depressing it is. Like, all I want is nothing but love for you, right? So I hated that. I was like, that upset me. And the other one, he said that if there was a woman that needed protecting and he didn't know her or didn't care about her, he wouldn't protect her. I was like, that's not how I am. I would. Even if I didn't really like the woman, I'd protect her. I was like, but that's because that's kind of like how I was raised. That's kind of like just what you do, right? It's just how to treat people. And so these are like the two key things. And again, I've been in those situations many, many times. I grew up on the streets of London. I've had those issues in the nightclub scene. You get in those situations all the time. I literally had to protect the women that I was with constantly from random dudes coming up. And like, I wasn't security, but I was definitely treated as security for a lot of different purposes, right? So these things matter. And so he really irritated me. But it was funny. He didn't irritate me as a person. He irritated me for how he treats other people. And I was like, that's not cool. You're a face, you're a somebody. But that night when we left, I went home with two women and had a threesome. He went home alone. And I love the fact that there's a bunch of people being like, the next day I got messages from, I suppose, his followers being like, he owned you. I'm like, in what way? Did he out-argue me? Maybe. He spoke loud. I just didn't care. Because for me and for you, for dating, the only thing that ever mattered is, remember that losers whine about doing their best and arguing and shouting, and the winner goes home and fucks the prom queen. At the end of the day, a lot of these people on these podcasts, and they irritate me so much because they're just trying to prove that women suck or that they're smarter. And I'm like, but you guys just look angry and sad and lonely. Like, who cares if you can prove to a young girl that you invited on your podcast that, she looks lame, or you out-manipulated her with words, or you had a better preparation, so I see them like, oh yeah, I dinged you. I'm like, and
right.
that helped you? How did, you know what it does? It makes men feel better that like, it doesn't matter if they can't get the woman because she's a loser anyway.
It's rage porn.
Right, dude, rage porn. Oh my God, that's such a good phrase. And so I wasn't surprised when I found out that this particular influencer hit one of his followers X amount of months later, right? And I believe, I don't know if he got canceled, but people stopped following him. It was like, because he was clearly angry at his own followers. He didn't like him. Of course he didn't like him because he barely likes women, right? I love women. I love women so much. Oh my God.
Speaking of women, question
Go for it.
from the list, all right? Speaking of women and, what are the two most important qualities, or it could be one, most important quality you find in somebody you're dating or a partner, whether it be monogamous or poly or just any kind of area, two most important qualities. And I ask you this because you're a veteran and I want to see what your thoughts are.
So two important qualities in a woman.
Yes.
So these have changed for me. And so I'm gonna share things that I've never spoken about before, but I do think these are really important. Number one, when everything, let me word this better. I grew up with a lot of trauma, a lot. My childhood was not a good childhood. You grew up in that kind of neighborhood, it was rough. When I'm hanging out with my therapists, whichever therapist I see, they'll put me at their top 1% of the most trauma they've had to deal with a client from my past. And I'm past it, right? But number one for me is the woman has to be able to handle my trauma and not judge me for it. And that's hard. That's really hard. I can't tell you how many times I've dated a woman and she'll get to a point where she's like, yo, I can't date someone who has had that much trauma. Like,
Is it because it happened or because it's coming up now?
it doesn't come up now, but there are times where they can't. Like, so there'll be moments. Like, for example, I'll give you an example. One of my brother was killed. My brother was killed like over a decade ago. On the anniversary of his death and on his birthday, I break down in tears the whole day. This morning, I was listening to a song in the airport. And I was just hanging out, waiting to come here. And somebody was singing a song about his dead brother. It was a new song. It was a rap track about how like you were always there for me. I collapsed on the floor of the airport crying. I'm like on the floor of the airport crying, right? So this is what I'm saying about the kind of trauma. Like that's what happens, right? So the first couple of years that happens, a woman's like, okay, cool. But I've definitely dated women that once you get onto like year 3, 4, they're like, hey, can you get over that now? I'm like, no, I cannot get over the death of my brother. Like I cannot. And that for me, I would use game and use my knowledge of psychology to like hold it in and deal with it. And God, I've done that for too long. And so no woman ever left me over it, but they definitely got to a point where you could see them being like, oh, here we go again, right? That's no longer a thing. Like the only women I date now, I tell them up front. I don't let them find out later, which is something that I made the mistake of doing. And I specifically vet for women that when there is something bad, traumatic, or what have you that's come up in my life, that they don't run away from it.
That's interesting. Okay.
Right.
Wow.
So it's different, totally different to what I would have said in the past, right?
It makes sense though.
Yeah, and it's wild. The other one, and this is actually one of the things I love about the Red Pill. I am now very into women who want to support a man versus who want to be supported themselves.
All right, let's go.
Yeah.
Break it down. Give me the 2-minute version of that.
So I've dated a lot of what I would call alpha women, and I'm very good at meeting them and attracting them. Ridiculously good. These are women that make a lot of money. These are women that are powerful in their own right, independent, strong, powerful women. And I tick the box for everything that most of them want, right? Successful, I work out, I can fight, I'm handy. I don't know if you know this about me. Like I build greenhouses and stuff. Like I can do carpentry work. Like I'm a dude.
Funny,
right?
accent, charming.
Got all the 6 foot.
Yeah.
Right. 6-inch penis plus 1 extra inch with the metal. 7 inches, kind of. Anyway, so the point is I tick a lot of the boxes. And at this point, they no longer tick boxes for me. Yeah.
Preach.
Yeah, and I've dated a lot of them. And I thought that was the pinnacle. Like I've spent most of my life being like, this is who I want. And recently I've realized that a lot of those women, that success that they have has stopped them being able to add anything to my life. Because what they're bringing is money, which I can get, or they're bringing me things I already have.
Right.
And they want me to appreciate them for those things. But then the minute you try to appreciate them for it or lean on them for it, and women, if you're listening, like you do need to hear this, they then react like that's a bad thing. So like if a woman, for example, is, let's just say that she's being really successful and doing something great, and I'm like, oh my God, I love that you're doing that. That would be useful with this other thing. They're like, well, that's mine, not yours.
Right.
Right. And you're like, okay, but what's mine is yours. How is what's yours not mine? Right. How can we not leverage that? And the minute you attempt to, they get a reaction to it. They get weird about it, right? Or they get very protective over it. And I'm like, I get where you're coming in that strong, independent woman thing. And, we got to look in America, there are more strong, independent women than ever. A lot of women are choosing to be single. And they're saying like, this is what I want. Like, good for them. We all know what happens with that. You can look at countries like Japan where people just stop dating. On the flip side, I've started dating women who their goal is to support a man who's worthy. And this is a very different type of woman that I'm now looking for, and they are who I date.
Would you call that a building mindset, a building frame?
It is a supporting, nurturing frame. Now, these women, it's important to know, they're not gold diggers. They're not after money. Most of them make money, but they're not focused on I'm a big, strong, independent woman. I've literally dated women that are like, I'm strong and independent, like they say it. I like women nowadays. I like women that say, I am strong and I'm not independent.
Right. Wow. Bro, let me jump onto that too.
Yeah.
I used to be the same thing. I dated Olympic athletes, people that won like silver and gold medals. I've dated actresses like in the movie Transformers. I've dated daughters of famous spiritual gurus. We'll talk about that offline, who this person is. I've had it all. And I used to like go to Sweden back in like 2018, go to Sweden, like find the most accomplished, tall, angelic person possible. And then my experience of that was the same thing. It's like, wow, it was great at a point, but now with this like very independence, it's actually a lower level of thinking because I'm looking for co-interworking dependent, right? I'm looking for somebody who's like, okay, I have my thing, you have your thing. Let's combine forces like Voltron or like the fucking whatever the Power Rangers thing is, and let's do something good with it. Let's combine our resources. Let's be useful to each other, and then we can both level up and see what happens as a result of that. Not I've leveled up in my life without you, and now I want all of yours too. That just doesn't seem to work because there's nothing in it for me. Because what am I going to get if they're accomplished? If somebody brings me, like I know this one girl, for example, right? She's a makeup artist, very famous makeup artist in movies. If I go to her, am I going to leverage her makeup artist network? That's of completely no use to me.
And to reverse it, what can you bring to her, really? You've got nothing for her. And then everyone's like, well, then it's all the other parts of the relationship. But those other parts of the relationship are missing some core components. And it isn't just about the career, right? Let's look yin and yang, right? Two black fish is no good. You got to have the black and the white.
Why's it got to be racist, bro?
Right?
What's a blackfish? What's that mean?
Wait, so in yin and yang, it's the two fish.
Oh, okay.
They circle each other.
Got it. I thought it was like a UK
No.
expression.
No, you got the black fish and the white fish, and they circle each other.
Right.
But they need both to be complete.
Right, and they both need a little bit of the white inside and a little bit of the black inside. Just the other little smaller circle.
Everyone needs a little bit of the other color inside them, right?
Yeah.
That's how that works. And so the funny thing is, I really did think that I was trying to find someone just like me, someone who had this. And I thought that was the pinnacle. And people would always say, oh my God, you got that one, good job. But it always ended up with the only component that we could mesh on realistically was in the home. And even then, there was all sorts of issues. So it was funny. I remember people would come to me and be like, man, at home, like you cook, you clean, you raise the kids and you work. I was like, yo, I have to because that's how it is. Now, I specifically look for partners that want to support. Not just want to support in the home, that's not what it's about, but support me and vice versa.
Right.
So I get to support them.
Right. So they'll call you and they'll be like, hey, Adam, did you eat lunch today? Just the phone call. And you're like, yeah, I ate. You didn't have to call me. You didn't make the lunch, but you're just checking on me to make sure that I did eat.
It's even better than that. It's like they've set alarms in their phone. Right. And they're like, hey, I noticed you haven't eaten lunch. Here's lunch. I noticed you haven't done this. Here's this. I don't rest on them because, like, for example, I will also, like this morning, I went up, I got myself breakfast, and then I brought breakfast home as well. So it is a truly symbiotic relationship. You become one, not two people as partners, one complete person. And this is interesting, obviously, because I'm poly, because I'm gonna have to explain that as well, because I'm not just looking for that one complete person, which becomes the second trait. Because my second trait of the two traits is a lesbian. Yeah, I pretty much only want lesbians now. I'm not really interested in straight women at all. They like not just have to be a lesbian, like that's like a pretty serious requirement. Mm-hmm. You want to hear why?
You can tell me why.
Here's why. I've dated a number of lesbians. They've ended up being the best relationships I've ever been in. So it is a common misconception that lesbians have never been with men. Many of them have absolutely dated men, and that's why they're lesbians. Because they've had such a bad experience with men.
I would also think if they're lesbians, you know exactly what their motivations are. There's no hidden motivations in them trying to like manipulate the situation, get to know you a certain way, extract some value out of the dating process. None of that is there.
None of it. And they also, when we first meet, they don't assume I'm trying to hit on them or date them. They'll say straight up, hey, I'm a lesbian. I'm like, cool, no problem whatsoever. And that it's just such a great initial thing. It's also, from a dating perspective, trying to get straight women who are like at the pinnacle of their career, that was a challenge for me. Getting lesbians is that much harder and so much more fun for a dating coach to get, right? So lesbians is huge. But lesbian dynamics, they have a lot of very interesting problems that men face.
Right.
Because they've dated women.
I know what you're talking about.
And
You're
they
right.
have the same complaints. They'll be like, I was dating this woman.
She ghosted me.
Dude. Yeah, and they'll be like, she said one thing, she was doing this other thing. And it's hysterical because we bond on that. Also, lesbian women tend to have some pretty cool qualities that you kind of want in a partner. Tend to be into video games, tend to be into a little bit of dude stuff. They've got like enough of that dude quality where you're like, wow, it's like really cool, I'm hanging out. And also when you date a lesbian, when a woman walks by, you don't have to worry about looking at the woman.
Right.
She's already looking, right? It's great. It's such a good...
shared hobby, shared pastime.
It's fabulous. So I'm really... And I've dated enough of them to know, and I say enough, I've dated like 8. Considering I've slept with over 1,000 women, 8's a really small number. But it's awesome because every one of those relationships, they've never ended badly. There's no drama. They've all ended like really chill. And they want to bring women into the relationship. Like they want to. Mm-hmm. And what I found is that a lot of these women, they like the idea of dating a guy. Like their parents will be like, oh, finally, it was just a phase.
I have a question for you.
Go for it.
Because we got about 15 minutes here.
Yeah.
I have a question. Going along with that, how did you know that polyamorous was right for you? So the question I'm going to ask you is, what was the conversation that you've had with yourself? Because in every interview, you kind of talk about like what you enjoy about it, but like the point where you're like,
I tried monogamy and it failed.
Right, but that's not it. You're like, it failed, but you're like, I think for me, this is my actual desire. Because I'll tell you the truth, I've had relationships that are open and poly as well, and I could do that, or I can do monogamous. It really depends on the situation. I could do either or. So that conversation myself is like, if it happens, I'm not like
I can't
dedicated 100% to it, to that lifestyle. So for you, it's like you're sitting there, I know you had a long-term relationship. I know you were working with that person as well. Okay, it doesn't work out. You want to have kids. Okay, great. And then one day you're sitting down there, you're overlooking a mountain, you're having a cigar or a coffee or whatever it is. You don't drink coffee. And you're just there, you're like, you know what? I think this is the way for me. Like, what does that conversation with yourself look like?
It was when the woman tried using monogamy as a manipulative tool. That's what ended it.
Right.
What ended it was we were married for a few years, and one day she says, I don't want to have kids. And I was like, well, I do. I was like, and we got married based on the fact that we were doing. She goes, yeah, well, I don't. And what are you going to do about it? I was like, what do you mean? And she goes, it's not like you're going to leave me. I'm really beautiful. And so she's like, so, I don't want to have kids. It's my body. I'm not having kids. My body, my choice. And the minute she said, my body, my choice, and I'm monogamous, and she's like, so it read to me like, gotcha, bitch.
Mm-hmm. So it wasn't the kids part, or part of it was the kids.
It was the kids.
But the downside was the monogamy.
Combined with what are you going to do?
Right.
And so I was like, what I'm going to do is I'm going to divorce you over this. And she went, I don't think you will. I was like, watch me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I divorced her over it, right? I was like, that's it.
So is it because the person says to you, you can't leave, you've invested too much into this, you don't have any other options?
Yeah, because she was weaponizing monogamy. And I realized other people I dated in the past had weaponized monogamy. So, like the nerd that I am, I started looking into the history of polyamory and realizing that monogamy is really a Christian construct. Didn't really happen beforehand. And when you start looking at other cultures and you go really deep, far back, like we wouldn't have survived if we were monogamous. True monogamous species, when their partner dies, they don't move on. If monogamy was real, we wouldn't have divorce. There'd be no need for it. We're monogamous, right? If you're monogamous, you're monogamous. That's what you are. I know I'm polyamorous because I'm capable of being in love with more than one woman. I know that for a fact. I know it because I can define love as oxytocin levels being rising in my body, and we can analyze me. If I was truly monogamous, when I was with one woman, my oxytocin would rise. When I was with another woman, it wouldn't. If they measured my oxytocin levels with you, they wouldn't really rise because I'm not in love with you. I like you, but I'm not in love with you. But if one of my partners was here, it would rise because I'm in love with them. So we know that biologically I can be in love with 2 women. So therefore I am polyamorous. And I am not monogamous. Monogamy is a choice. And that's cool. And I love it. And I respect it. I love the people that have been married to one person for 56 years and they've never cheated. And they're just like, this is my person. I'm like, hell yeah, you go. And then if their partner passes away, they're like, I can't possibly date anyone else. That was my person. That's so beautiful and romantic. And I love it. And I am a yes to that for them. Not for me. I am 100% polyamorous. Why lesbians? It's really simple. The other question that people ask constantly, to the point that it's annoying, is they're like, well, what if she wants a guy? And I've been saying for years, yeah, but they don't ever want a guy. Mm-hmm. And women are always like, well, why not? Here's why.
They're lesbians.
I select women that want women. I don't select women that want men. Like that's part of my process. I specifically want to date women. Typically, I've gone for bisexual women or women who are bi-curious. I have shifted in now I pretty much only want lesbians. I want women that only want women, but have had some guys in the past and have been open to it.
And then I'm sure there's monogamy can be weaponized. So there's the downsides to monogamy. I'm sure there's also downsides to polyamory, but the downsides of polyamory for you are less than the downsides of monogamy.
Well, it comes down to, it would be like this. I could spend my entire life walking around on one leg, but there are downsides to that. And I don't have to. Same with polyamory. I am polyamorous. I'm polyamorous, as are, if you've dated more than one person in your life, you're also polyamorous.
Most people are, but they don't. They go through dating polyamory. But
Not
they
even
don't
most.
say it.
They all are. If you've dated more than one, you're
At the same
polyamorous.
time.
Because that's, well, it doesn't have to be at the same time. That other phrase isn't part of the word polyamory.
I see.
Multi-love, right? You are capable of loving more than one person. The end. Now, let's bring in cheaters. Every single cheater is also polyamorous, right? Monogamy is a choice. It's a choice that most people are forced into because they're told, you got to do this. Society forces you into it, right? But the reality is most people are polyamorous. They are just living in a monogamous society.
I think what you're saying makes a lot of sense. It goes back to what we were saying before, that most people are polyamorous because they're still competing and comparing offers from other people that are out there. Even if they're in that monogamous relationship, they're like,
still
what can this other
polyamorous.
person do? What can this other person offer me? That's why they're not posting the boyfriend on Instagram. And also, to go back to what you said before, they also don't know how to build and make that building relationship. And because they don't know how to build, they're not actually monogamous. 100%. Because if they were, they'd be nurturing and building that relationship as its own like entity.
And this is unethical monogamy. Unethical polyamory and unethical monogamy.
I see.
Ethical polyamory, which is what I do, everyone knows what's involved. Everyone knows what's going on. And that's just how it is. Like the end. And so many people confuse that. Now, jealousy is a factor, right? Jealousy comes in. Jealousy is absolutely a factor. But jealousy comes in the real world as well. It comes in with careers. It comes in with money. Jealousy isn't just exclusive to polyamory. And just like in the real world where you have to control your shit, you have to control your shit when it comes to polyamory as well.
Yeah.
And a lot of guys don't understand that in a relationship, when you're dating two women and they're really into each other, you're basically a living sex toy. Like that's your job. Your job is the penis goes where they want the penis.
Right, in the car.
Right, yeah. That's
You're
it.
the driver as well.
Yeah,
the
that's it.
chauffeur,
That's how it is.
and
You're the actually, fun fact, I'm not. In our relationship, no, I get the back seat. I get to lie down. And so I'm not even the driver because the driver has power. Mm-hmm. When there are two women, they see this a lot with apes as well. When a group of women, like female apes gang up on the guy just gives in. And that's actually very similar in our relationship. When the women decide something, I shut up and sit back and don't argue because you're going to end up with two angry women. And that's actually the beautiful part about this kind of relationship because I get driven around. I get to lie on the back seat. I get to relax. They talk to each other. I don't have to join in the conversation. I can sit back and be quiet. And then when they need masculine energy, they're like, hey, we need a dude.
Right.
And then
you come in and you supplement
right, and then you
needed.
step in and go, okay, male is here. Like what male thing needs doing, right?
Right.
And then you do the male thing.
Yes.
And then they go back to taking over and you can relax again.
I have the same situation. That's very briefly.
Yeah.
I have like a bunch of girls that they're friends. Okay. Some of them may like me. Some of them may not. We'll leave that up to imagination. But I had them all in an Instagram group and I chat. I'm like, hello, my loves. What are we doing today, my loves? Let's all go here. But I don't try to lead it too much because then it just becomes I'm dating several individual women. And that's like the nightmare. And also like if one of them gets mad, then they start talking. And you're right. I kind of like them to be their own unit. And they don't even need me, and I can step in and I can be a part of that unit and supply whatever the man is supposed to supply at that time. Like it might even be like I order food for the table, but then it's like I go back to just being one of the group.
Bingo.
Yeah.
And that is that dynamic, and it's so hard because it goes against what most guys think. And we have to start looking at like this concept of alpha that's so broken. Even the guy himself that invented alpha after studying wolves said, wait, I'm wrong, but they ran with his work and published it everywhere. There is no an alpha. If there is an alpha, everyone on the planet agree who that is on the planet right now. Who is the alpha of the planet?
Trump.
Right? Is it Putin?
Is it a guy from China, North Korea guy?
Right?
I don't know who it is. Yeah.
Right? We can't name them. We can't name them because there is no alpha of the planet. And there is also no alpha of any of the individual tribes. If we say Trump is the alpha of the Republicans, like if we made that statement, would every Republican agree with that?
They should.
Think
They
so, right?
don't.
Right? Would 3 months ago everyone agree that Biden was the alpha of the Democrats? If not, who is the alpha? Right? Social groups are far more complicated than an alpha. I like to think that there is an individual leader at any given moment. and that leadership changes constantly. And, you know, we all we have to do is look at social media. It's like once upon a time, people would have said Dan Bilzerian was the king, right? What about now?
Yeah.
Right? So that's not how it works. We're far more complicated than that. Far more complicated.
The alpha is a position that you can be voted into. It is a position that you can claim by brute force, and it's flexible and it changes over time.
Yeah, and I love that because I talk about territorial alpha versus social, and I don't use alpha, I use leader. And at any given point, there is a territorial leader or a social leader. A territorial leader will almost always get knocked out by a social leader because they have the weight of numbers. If there's a group of 12 people, one says I'm in charge, and the other 10 say, no, this other guy's in charge, whether the other guy wants to be in charge or not, he's now got the weight of 11 people. He's now in charge. He might have been the beta to that person. There was actually, I've seen some real life scenarios. It's actually really fun. I'll share a story with you. You know, I'm the guy that helped Julian with Julian Gate.
Yes.
So
I'm familiar with that situation.
That day when they came to my house, so it was Nick, Tyler, and Julian came to my house and they said, hey, we need help. For the first 20 minutes, I was making drinks for everyone and they were just talking at me because they were very stressed. And I was letting them stress because they were clearly needed to talk. And I let them deal with it. And I just sat listening and made everyone tea. And then Tyler said, wait, we're all being too alpha. Let's listen to the guy. And I loved that moment because my knowledge of social dynamics, I was like, you all sound really stressed. None of you sounds alpha. Mm-hmm. And I knew what he was saying. He's saying we're dominating the conversation. We came here for help. Let's stop. Right, which is really it. But he used the word alpha, which I totally get and I understand and I don't disagree with his terminology. But in my head, I was like, no, the alpha is the one that everyone needs to listen to. More often than not, the alpha is the one that shuts the fuck up. Right? The alpha is the one people have come to. And people really misunderstand this dynamic. And I was only the alpha in the moment. Mm-hmm. I wasn't the alpha when they were all talking. I was the alpha when they were all listening. And I wasn't the alpha after the situation was resolved and they all went back and did what they did. Because alpha is just a title you wear for a moment.
I see.
So if you stop as a man saying, I'm going to be the alpha male, I'm going to be an alpha, and instead you just become really cool with who you are and really comfortable and focus on, you know, doing what you want to do, then it's great. And so, you know, it's often like, I'll go back to, you know, I've been in a lot of fights, especially growing up. And on social media, I don't know why guys like to do this. They're like, I could totally beat that guy. And I've had people send me videos of them boxing. And they're like, you still think you could beat me? And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, really? I'm like, yeah. And they're like, why? I was like, because I'm going to bring a really big knife. And these guys will be like, yeah, but not with a knife. I'm like, yeah, but I'm going to bring a knife.
Right.
And they're like, why? I was like, because I don't really want to fight. If I'm going to fight, I'm going to self-defend myself. I live in Texas where I'm allowed to carry a sword legally. And if you come to me on my land, I'm going to defend my land because I'm allowed to. And they're like, yeah, but if it wasn't a knife. I was like, the funny thing about a knife is if I decide you're in a knife fight, you're in a knife fight. You don't get to choose not to be in one. Like, and then they're like, well, if I have a knife, I was like, you'll still lose. Unless you are a ranking knife fighting sword fighter in the world, like ranking, you do competitive fighting, you're going to lose that fight. I am a trained, bladed weapon expert. I've come to Montreal. I'm sorry I'm very aggressive today, but it's because I've come here to fight. I've come here to fight 4,500 people with weapons this week for fun, because that's my idea of fun. Full contact, swords, knives, you name it. I'm going to be practicing. So I will humbly accept defeat by anyone who is an expert at weapons who comes to me as like, I'm going to beat you up. But other than that, that's the equalizer, right? So when somebody is jacked up and they're working out all the time and they're going to, you know, I'm alpha, I'm this, I'm that, and the other, they're not scary to anyone who knows what they're doing. My really good friends I have some incredible friends like Mikhail Abdullah, he's an incredible jiu-jitsu practitioner. God, he's terrifying. I wouldn't fight that guy. If he came to me and was like, Adam, I'd beat you up. I'd be like, yeah, you would. Right? I'd just be like, you absolutely would. I've got another guy who's like a Will Campuzano, I think I pronounce his name right. He's like another UFC champion. But these guys aren't like that. They don't walk around being like, look how big and macho I am, right? Mm-hmm. When I'm stressed out, if I phone Mikhail's like, dude, come for a hug. Let me take you for coffee. That is a leader. And he could beat up almost, he's ex-special forces. This guy's a badass, you know? But it's always the guys, the mouthy ones, that are like, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do that. They're like, I'm being alpha. I'm like, if you have to say you're alpha, you're not alpha.
Right. Which goes back to what we started with. Don't say it on the podcast. Prove it in the field.
Right, exactly.
Adam, my man, if people want to find you to challenge you to a
duel.
to a duel,
I've set myself up, haven't I?
or
I'm saying
if they want to learn from you some
my
social
God, I've set
skills,
myself
some relationship skills,
Yeah.
what is the best way to get in touch with you?
So
Shout yourself out.
Yeah, so at the Adam Lyons on Instagram. And I'll be honest, like for dating, like truly, if you want to learn dating, I don't want your money. I want you to go and do a self-sabotage test that I created. It's free. My self-sabotage test basically says, most guys, you don't suck. You're not bad. There's nothing wrong with you. You're not a nice guy. You're just a human. You're just you're like a normal dude, you know? And you're trying not to be a dick. But I create this test, it's free, and it just tells you where you might be going wrong. And if you take my test, and at the end of the test, you read the report, and you're like, oh my God, I think I'm going wrong. There is a free 2.5-hour training of me coaching somebody privately that you can watch if you apply to work with me. And I always say to someone, apply, watch the video and go through the free training. Because if you won't go through that training, there's no point working with me because you're not going to do anything I say. Once you've done that, you'll know whether I've already fixed you and you don't need me, in which case, please give me a shout and tell other people to do it. If not, and you do want to work, then we can talk about that and deal with that then. But God, do the free thing. Do all the free stuff. And genuinely, I know it sounds funny, I come to Montreal every year with something called the Voyage North. And if you really do want to fight, like really, really, if you're like, I want to come and fight this guy, you can come to the Voyage North, buy a ticket, come up there, and we'll fight with weapons and armor. And I would love to. I'll fight anyone that wants to come to that event. And humbly, like if you're better than me, hell yeah. Like I want to get beaten and lose. And then I want to learn, right? I want you to tell me, how did you beat me? But just remember, you're going to be coming up with a guy who's ranked in the top 5 out of 4,500 people. And I give number 1 a run for his money. So, you know,
Boom.
but come, please.
Adam, pleasure to have you, man. I know you got a lot of stuff to do. I know. Thank you for dropping by really quickly.
Thank you.
I know you have some people you got to go see down the street just now.
I do, yeah.
Who are eating. So we'll wrap it up.
Heck yeah.
At the Adam Lyons on Instagram.
The Adam Lyons on Instagram. Yeah, I do. I talk about everything from dating to business and being a dad. I got 5 kids, so I like talking about being a dad.
Cool.
Legend. Hey, Madison, this guy's a legend, by the way. Let me give him a shout out that you can actually use. You know, when I worked with RSD and I was helping out there, I got to meet all the different coaches, and you instantly get a vibe for the guys that are full of crap, who thankfully are no longer with the company, and the guys who are really good. And I want to be clear, Madison is one of the really, really good ones. Like, this guy is the real deal. He does know how to do it. He does walk the walk. And I love watching you investigate and play on social media and figure out how you're getting the word out there. But sometimes a very good endorsement is worth a lot more. And I absolutely endorse this guy. He's the real deal.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, dude, of course.
Cheers. We'll cut it there.